have a question.
Yeah.
So you were talking about the bucket of benefits at the end that you can only draw out of it once, that you can only count one benefit for one thing. And I have a question about that because these are proposed rules. They're not actually in effect. So what happens in the situation where that I expect PHMSA might perhaps be finding itself in, which is that they have multiple proposed rules pending at the same time? Why can't they use the same benefits twice?
So actually this RIA spends a lot of time explaining why each of these sets of benefits don't necessarily count it twice, right? I mean, I think they're very aware of the fact that it could be counted twice. And so what I see in here is an attempt to really try to keep things separate. I mean, I think there are probably situations where, right, the regulatory targets are different, or you could make assumptions about maybe the incident rate is going to go up, right? So you would have more, it's sort of a strange thing to hope for, but you would have a bigger bucket. But I don't think those things are in there.
Yeah, what I would add is, you know, at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're looking at the incidents that have occurred in the past, right? And we're trying to prevent them from occurring in the future. So we can't, when we move these products forward, we're challenged to not prevent the same, count that same incident more than one time. So in other words, if we have a proposed rule that's going to prevent X number of incidents, which has a certain value, that totaled, when we approach that 100% or that effectiveness rate that's, not very reasonable, it's a challenge to get it through the system.
And that's based on causation of those previous incidents, or?
Yeah, I mean, basically when we're doing a rule, right, the rule is a proposed solution to a problem, and what we're looking at is those incidents that rule would have prevented from occurring in the future.
Okay.
That's our norm.
All right. Oh, and can you send me a PDF of that awful chart? Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Hi, so we've heard two different viewpoints, and sorry, I'm Michelle Schwartz from PHMSA. So we've heard two different viewpoints. We've heard one viewpoint that, cost-benefit analysis vastly undercounts benefits, and then we've heard a perspective that it overcounts benefits. Cost-benefit analyses have been done for years, so if we're looking historically and looking back at cost-benefit analyses and how they've actually panned out, is there any empirical evidence of what actually is the case? How accurate are these?
So as you can imagine, there's a ton in the legal literature about cost-benefit analysis, mostly pretty critical. And from what I've seen, when people have gone back and looked at it, because one of the interesting things about cost-benefit analysis is it's this point in time, right? But you don't actually see whether your predictions play out. And the people who have gone back and looked at predictions, and this is not specific, I don't think, to pipelines, but just sort of as a general matter, they see that costs have been over-counted at the beginning, and as for benefits, I think they've been undercounted. So this is a lot based on EPA rules, and again, I'm hesitant to completely make say that pipelines are exactly the same as EPA rules, but I know that analysis has been done.
No accountants in the room, I guess, huh?
All right. I got one.
So, Bill, you actually asserted that the benefits would be overestimated, but I didn't. Your presentation mostly focused on the costs. I didn't hear. Maybe I missed it. Why you're making that assertion?
Yeah. So one point is you can't have your cake and eat it too on a cost-benefit analysis. Okay, so if the assertion is that the costs are going to be unusually low because operators are already doing this stuff anyway, well then you certainly can't assign many benefits to making it a rule because it's already being done. So how is that going to improve performance if the baseline performance is already there? Okay, so from that simple standpoint, I'd say, well, it's overestimating benefits.
Oh, but you didn't really challenge Sarah's analysis that a lot of benefits are not quantified.
No, I'll agree that there's things that are difficult to quantify on the cost and the benefit side, and certainly you can have benefits that exceed what was quantified in the analysis.
And also, when we do an analysis of situations where the operator's already performing that requirement, we try not to count those benefits. If we've missed something, please let us know, Bill. But I also want to be said, there's a lot of discussion about looking back in time. When I first met Ms. Quarterman in her office and I had a discussion with her, I said, the easy part of my job is looking at what has occurred in the past and try to preventing that from occurring in the future. The hard part of my job is trying to figure out what's going to occur in the future before it's actually happened and trying to prevent it. And that, though we talk about what has occurred in the past, we also are trying to have that critical eye and try to prevent that incident that's never occurred from ever occurring in this history.
So I'd just say, actually I agree with Bill on one point, which is I think that I think it probably undercounts costs generally. I think not necessarily always on compliance costs, because I think, again, those have been shown to maybe be overestimated at the beginning, and they go down in part because people get better at doing what they're doing, or there's technology that happens. This is over a period of time. But I think if you're serious about wanting to try to think about all the indirect costs, you're right, those aren't in there, right? Because again, it's not possible to count them. So there's just this universe of things. And of course, whatever you can't count is not going to be in the decision.
Hi, so I have a question about the repair costs. You said that was one of the highest costs. Is that solely because you're shifting things from repairing it when you can get to it to an immediate cost? Or is it just because of better detection, you're now repairing things that you wouldn't have repaired before? And if that's the case, I would argue that that's not a cost of the regulation, that's simply a cost of the pipeline being broke and you need to fix it. So which is it? And if it is any repair cost, why is that counted as a cost of the regulation?
Well, actually, I think what we have in our proposal is that the highest, from Sarah's presentation there, that the highest cost was actually the cost to assess. And we actually stated in our analysis that the repair costs were minimal. But Bill was countering that he believed it was a higher cost for any his reasons. But we were kind of taking more of a tactic that you just espoused.
I think I was partly looking at the repair costs for post extreme weather, natural disasters.
So I just so looking at Sarah's analysis, and sorry, are you finishing up something there? So the highest cost was inspection, like he said, and I was kind of surprised that, isn't inspection done manually by somebody going out, taking an instrument, or looking at some, looking at whatever is going on? So why would you classify that as not labor? Just getting into the weeds a little bit, but
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time?
Basically, when Sarah showed the breakdown of costs, and it was $0.2 million for labor versus $8 million for assessment, inspection and assessment. And inspection is invariably being done by somebody. So why is that not labor, and why is that treated as separate?
That's my slide not being as precise as it could. So what I'm looking at in the labor side is just where you only had labor costs. So that was really on information and planning. And then the rest of the costs are done by activity. So, per mile of pipeline or something. So, I think you're right? Assessment is hugely about labor, and I think that's worked into the particular cost. It's just not broken out as precisely in those other categories as it is specific to the reporting and information and planning, because of course, they're really all you're talking about is labor.
Okay, over here. Congress created this cost-benefit thing, and they also often give PHMSA mandates that they feel very passionate about. Can Congress waive cost-benefit, say, we want automated valves at every stream crossing, and we don't care about cost-benefit in this instance?
Well, one tool that would be available, and it has been used in the past, is to make a provision self-executing, is one way to describe it. In other words, it's not a mandate, so to speak, on PHMSA to do a rule, but it is a mandate on the operators to perform a certain action. NPMS was done that way. In a way, gas transmission integrity management, there was an aspect of it that was done that way. If you look at the cost benefit for the gas transmission integrity management rule, the biggest cost savings of that rule, or benefit of that rule, was actually the difference between the self-executed standard and the PHMSA adopted standard. That was the biggest cost savings of that rule. So there's other tools available. Are there challenges to get these rules through cost benefit? Yes, there are. But there are other ways to affect the changes that we're trying to get through, and that is one way, is to make the standards self-executed.
Yeah, and I would just say as a lawyer, right, statutes are statutes. You can put in an exception to the general rule, and that would, Congress, I think, could easily do that and write that in. I think once you have a cost-benefit requirement in, it's probably pretty difficult. The one question I had was, you don't have to use the cost-benefit standard, right, if the technical advisory committee signs off on it? Am I right on that?
No.
Okay.
So the technical advisory committee will actually give, one of their recommendations is also that it's economically feasible to do it.
Okay.
So they're actually not just looking at the rule, they're also looking at the cost benefit as well.
Okay.
So, Sarah, I'm over here. There is a provision in the statute that allows the PHMSA statutory CBA to be skipped if there's 2/3 or 3/4, I don't remember, of the advisory committee that says you can skip that portion of it, but that's not going to get them out of the executive order aspect. So.
Right. Okay. So that's what I was wondering about. Yeah. And you're right. It wouldn't get around the executive order aspect, but then you'd have an information device as opposed to a standard for what you're actually setting your safety standards on. Right.
So at the risk of revealing my own ignorance, I will ask a question about energy reliability. The only reason I ask this question is we're sitting in New Orleans. We've been through events like Katrina, and we can tell you from the inside what the issues were and the costs were associated with the loss of energy and the near loss of motor fuels on the East Coast. We were within days of outages up and down the East Coast. So I know it may be in the realm of what's not quantifiable, but there is certainly somewhere a cost associated with or benefit associated with reliability, and just wondering if you have any thoughts on that subject.
I think you're exactly right. I think that should be part of the analysis, and it strikes me that of all of the unquantifiable benefits, right, that seems to me one that you at least could take a stab at quantifying, and I'm not sure why it's not in there.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things we are actively doing is we're looking at what I refer to as our benefit formula, and we're trying to make sure that we've captured all the potential benefits that are out there, that we're not leaving any benefits on the table. We're actually in the process right now of working with our friends on the hazmat side of PHMSA to look at the environmental impacts of crude oil spills, and that was very relevant for them for their high hazard train rule. So that we're making sure that we're adequately, we're capturing all the benefits associated with preventing environmental spills to the public, that we're not just relying solely on the data that's provided by the operators. So we're trying to improve our benefit formula actively today, and we're looking at all potential options.
Okay. One point, I think the way that the cost-benefit analysis is being done now is a little bit different than it was done in the past. Some of these things were counted twice as they moved through, but one thing John mentioned on the benefit side on the gas transmission rule, actually the biggest thing that got it over the hump to get that through on the IMP rule was the changing of the class location, because integrity management was going to substitute for that, and that rulemaking never happened. And so the benefit side of that, of doing that, that actually put it over the edge on the gas transmission rule, really never happened as a benefit. So there are other benefits out there besides human health and safety and stuff like that as technology improves, and maybe you can do it smarter and you don't have to do it the old way. So.
Any last questions? All right, help me thank this panel. Interesting.